Taiwan denounced China for releasing a forced TV confession of a Taiwanese businessman. The man has been missing in China for over a year due to his support of Hong Kong's pro-democracy movement. 9 million people are to be tested for the CCP virus in a Chinese city. An expo was postponed, a hospital closed, only because of 12 cases if the official figure is accurate. Fine particles of PM 2.5 in the air in Beijing exceeded the limit 3 times, causing haze and harming people's health. Anti-American at work, but admiring America in real life. This way of life has become popular among many Chinese celebrities. An anti-American pioneer scholar is revealed to have sent his son to the U.S. for education. And U.S. flags are made in China, sold in China, and used in China. But Chinese authorities forbade this because a group of residents wanted to show their support for U.S. President Trump using these flags. Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. First, we turn to the Taiwan Strait. Taiwanese authorities are denouncing the Chinese regime for releasing the forced TV confession of a Taiwanese businessman. The man has been missing for over a year. Chinese police accuse him of supporting Hong Kong's pro-democracy movement and spying for Taiwan.
After disappearing in mainland China for over a year, Taiwanese businessman Li Mengchun finally showed up in a Chinese state media program. Dressed in prison uniform, Li confessed that he had hurt his motherland. The Taiwanese reportedly filmed a dozen videos of Chinese troops gathering at the border with Hong Kong during last year's protests. He then shared some of them online. He also went to Hong Kong to support the pro-democracy protest. China accused him of spying into state secrets for an overseas organization and endangering national security. The Chinese regime has previously been criticized by rights groups and foreign governments for airing forced confessions of foreigners, often for political purposes. Beijing also claimed Li is just one of the hundreds of Taiwan spies they swept up in a new counterintelligence campaign. State media blasted Taiwan President Tsai Ing-wen, saying she had, quote, colluded with anti-China forces from outside and frequently stirred up trouble. Taipei authorities dismissed the spy accusation as a political stunt and demanded Beijing to release the man immediately.
Everybody can tell that this is a type of setup, where China arrested him first and then forced him to confess. It's no use to verbally attack or try to intimidate the Taiwanese people. Also, China should not expect this to have any impact on Taiwan. This is the very reason why we don't want to be taken over by the Chinese. They just randomly arrest people, and no one knew it's actually the government that arrested him until a year later. You did not know what he was charged with until then.
In a statement, Taiwan's more Beijing-friendly party KMT urged the Taipei government to come up with a way to allow the Taiwanese to return home as soon as possible. The KMT said it hoped that China would handle the case with an open and transparent way.
I don't know the real situation, but we're concerned about anything that might infringe on human rights.
The spying accusation came after the Taiwanese president just extended an olive branch on Saturday, saying Taiwan wants to have a meaningful dialogue with China on an equal basis. Then, hours after her speech, Chinese state media released a video of military exercises simulating an invasion of Taiwan. Penny Zhou, NTD News.
Now we turn to the South China Sea. Officials in Malaysia said on Saturday they had detained 60 Chinese nationals along with 6 fishing vessels. They've been accused of trespassing in Malaysian waters. Malaysia's Maritime Enforcement Agency said the vessels were believed to have been on the way to Mauritania, but had to stop due to a malfunction. Earlier this year, a Chinese research ship spent a month surveying Malaysia's exclusive economic zone. At the time, it was at a standoff with a Malaysian oil exploration vessel. And between 2016 and 2019, Malaysia reported about 90 intrusions by Chinese Coast Guard and Navy ships. Beijing has laid claim to most of the resource-rich South China Sea, which is also a major trade route. But other nations in the area sharply dispute it. Another Asian country is complaining about Beijing, this time over its actions on the East China Sea. Japan said on Sunday that 2 Chinese vessels entered what Japan considers its territorial waters near disputed islands. According to a Japanese Coast Guard, it marked the 21st time this year that Chinese boats have entered Japanese waters. Japan has complained of relentless intrusions in waters around the group of islands claimed by both nations. It is known as the Senkaku in Japan and the Diaoyu in China. 9 million people are to be tested for the CCP virus in China's eastern Qingdao city. Authorities ordered citywide testing Monday after 12 new cases came up. According to the announcement, all 9 million will be tested within 5 days. All 12 cases appear related to a hospital currently treating imported cases, but officials have not been able to trace the source of the outbreak. The hospital has since been locked down. Any buildings suspected of housing infected people have also been locked down. The Third People's Hospital of Qingdao City posted a notice at its entrance on Sunday. It said due to epidemic prevention and control measures, the hospital was designated as a backup hospital for virus treatment. All outpatient and emergency departments have been closed since then. The new cases came shortly after China had its week-long National Day holiday, where millions traveled across the country. The CDC in different cities are warning residents against visiting Qingdao. The International Investment and Trade Expo in Qingdao has been postponed. The expo was to include over 500 enterprises from 28 countries. The Chinese regime is known to underreport cases in order to downplay the severity of any crisis. We can't independently verify the true scale of the latest outbreak. Experts are pointing to the severity of the virus containment measures as a hint that the true scale is much bigger than authorities are letting on. Australian researchers say the CCP virus can survive on banknotes, glass, and stainless steel for up to 28 days, much longer than the flu virus. They say cleaning and hand washing are especially important to combat the virus.
Experts know the virus that causes COVID-19 can survive on some surfaces for days. But a new study has found it can remain infectious for 28 days under the right conditions. That's far longer than the flu virus, which can last for up to 17 days. The study was released on Monday by Australia's National Science Agency. And researchers found the virus persisting on phone screens, paper money, and stainless steel. They say it shows how critical cleaning and hand washing are in fighting the pandemic. Shane Riddell is the study's lead researcher.
We still don't know what an infectious dose is. So even though we were able to recover infectious virus up to 28 days, that may not be enough to actually cause an infection. But I think the key message really is to wash hands where possible and sanitize your hands with an alcohol-based disinfectant often.
One caveat, the experiment was done entirely in the dark without UV light. Direct sunlight has been shown to degrade the virus. It also survived longest at about room temperature rather than sweltering heat. And the study found that proteins and fats in body fluids help the virus last longer. So cool environments with high protein, one official at the Australian agency told Reuters, may help to explain the persistence and spread of COVID-19 in meat processing plants around the world.
Now we turn to environmental concerns in Beijing. The city reported a spike in air pollution over the weekend. PM 2.5 particles, or fine particulate matter, is an airborne pollutant. At high levels, it can be dangerous to people's health. According to Chinese state-run media, on Friday, PM 2.5 levels in China's capital soared to 110 micrograms per cubic meter. At its peak, it reached nearly 160 micrograms per cubic meter. Air quality standards issued by the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency say the safe maximum for PM 2.5 within 24 hours is 35 micrograms per cubic meter. Above that level is considered harmful. Beijing's weekend levels hit 3 times higher than the U.S. standard. Breathing in fine particles like PM 2.5 can be dangerous. That's because they can get into the lungs or even into the bloodstream. It's especially harmful to those with heart or lung diseases like asthma and for the elderly and children. Beijing's surrounding areas also suffered amid the severe air pollution. On Monday, the city's pollution had reportedly cleared somewhat. Local media cited industry pollution and weather conditions as the cause for the spike. The United States is blocking Chinese Communist Party members from immigrating or becoming U.S. citizens. That's as Chinese people already in America continue withdrawing from the party.
Earlier this month, U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services announced that it will bar Chinese Communist Party members from immigrating to the U.S. It also includes those affiliated with other communist parties. The new policy is part of a U.S. effort to address safety and security threats. But some are questioning exactly why the move has made such big waves in the overseas Chinese community. Now we look at why quitting the Chinese Communist Party, or CCP, holds such significance for many. For over a decade, Chinese people across the world have been quitting the party and its affiliated organizations. New York resident Liu Juefan immigrated to the United States 3 years ago. In 2011, she broke through China's internet censorship firewall using a software called Freegate. She then announced her withdrawal from the Communist Youth League, a CCP-run organization for young Chinese citizens. To do it, she used the Chinese language website of our sister media, the Epoch Times. Freegate software was developed by Falun Gong practitioners outside of China. It was made to help people in totalitarian regimes achieve freedom on the internet. Liu says she agrees with the new U.S. policy.
The CCP is an evil organization. If you say you're a good person, then don't join it. If you're in it by mistake, then you should get out quickly, right? But if you don't want to withdraw and still want to get some benefits by being one of its members, but you also want to enjoy the democracy, freedom, rule of law, and welfare of the free world, then it doesn't work. Good and evil are incompatible.
Another New York resident, Yu Chunguang, declared his withdrawal via the Epoch Times website in 2014. Before that, he used similar software to learn about what really happened during the 1989 Tiananmen Square massacre in Beijing. Information about the date is strongly censored and blocked in mainland China, with many Chinese people often being misled about it or completely unaware. He also learned about the other highly censored topics, like the persecution of Falun Gong and forced organ harvesting of prisoners of conscience. Yu also described reading the book The 9 Commentaries on the Communist Party, saying it helped him see through the CCP's false narratives, specifically regarding China's Great Famine, where millions died of starvation in the early 60s, and the Cultural Revolution, a political and cultural overhaul led by former communist leader Mao Zedong. After coming to the U.S., he spoke about his experiences publicly.
I, together with my wife and daughter, declared our withdrawal from the party on November 19, 2014, at 12 a.m. because it was the day marking the 10th anniversary of the publication of the book 9 Commentaries on the Communist Party.
Xu Hongwei, a Chinese man living in Canada, declared his withdrawal from the CCP's Young Pioneers group years ago. The group is run by the CCP's Youth League and is designed to instill loyalty to the party in children. Xu joined the Young Pioneers at a young age, like most Chinese children. He automatically left the group at age 14, as it's meant for children 14 and younger. But he says he felt a need to formally withdraw anyway.
Because the very nature of the Chinese Communist Party is to oppose God, the Creator, the universe, and mankind, and to destroy the morality of mankind.
Xu said the true events of the Tiananmen Square massacre led him to see what the CCP stands for and how it uses hatred and violence to maintain its power. He explained that, in his opinion, the appeasement policies adopted by Western countries in the past few decades were actually indulging the party.
What are the characteristics of appeasement? It's ideological confusion, and there's no distinction between enemy and friend. The so-called cooperation is for the collusion of economic interests. They know that the party is evil. They know for sure about the Tiananmen massacre, the suppression of Falun Gong, and live organ harvesting. These crimes are plain to see. Western countries all know it. They've passed some bills condemning it. The thunder is loud, but the rain is not heavy.
Xu says the pandemic has forced the international community to even further isolate the CCP. NTD News.
A recent U.S. immigration ban is causing a stir in Chinese society. It targets members of the Chinese Communist Party, or CCP. The New York-based Global CCP Withdrawal Service Center reports a dozens-fold increase in the number of those withdrawing from the CCP and its affiliated organizations in recent days. Immigrant hopeful Ms. Xie visited the center on Friday. There, she sought to apply for a CCP withdrawal certificate for her husband. She explained that her daughter is a U.S. citizen. Her immigration application has already been approved, but her husband is still waiting for the last step, an interview at a U.S. Consulate General in China. Her husband used to work for a state-owned company in China. At the time, the company required everyone who was promoted to join the Communist Party. So he joined too, although he says he didn't believe in the party's policies. Their daughter told them it would help the process if her father got a CCP withdrawal certificate. He agreed, so Ms. Xie visited the center to apply. Now we look to a Chinese scholar who is considered to be an anti-American pioneer in China. He is an example of a lifestyle that is popular among many Chinese celebrities, anti-American at work but admiring America in real life. Jing Tianrong is the vice dean of the School of International Relations at a major university in Beijing. One of the most famous lines from him is "Democracy is poison." Another famous statement he made is sending a child to study in the United States from a young age actually harms him severely. But what he did is the complete opposite. His son graduated from Boston University last year. According to the website of the Institute of World Economics and Politics of Chinese Academy of Social Sciences, his son studied from September 2014 to May 2015 at the Department of Political Science in Boston University and got a PhD. He's not the only one who's sent his child to the U.S. for education. The head of the Chinese Communist Party, Xi Jinping's daughter, graduated from Harvard University years ago. Geng Shuang, a spokesman of China's foreign ministry, was known for his hard stance towards the U.S. Yet he sent his daughter to school in New York after being deployed there as China's vice representative earlier this year. Also, the daughter of another spokesperson, Hua Chenying, who is the head of the Information Department of China's foreign ministry, has reportedly studied in the U.S. as well. It remains to be seen how the new U.S. ban on CCP members and their relatives immigrating to the U.S. will impact these Chinese officials and their families. Now we look to a group of Chinese citizens who are standing up to Chinese security officers. That's after the guards cracked down on the group's planned show of support for the U.S. U.S. President Trump has taken a hardline stance against the Chinese Communist Party. Despite anti-Trump propaganda circulating in China, some citizens have expressed support for him. Earlier this month, the U.S. president was diagnosed with the CCP virus. In response, a group from the southwestern city of Chongqing planned an event aiming to hold dozens of U.S. flags and share photos online. On the photos, they had planned to write, "Citizens of Chongqing support President Trump's re-election and maintaining a civilized world order." But the plan was never realized. That's because the local security office got involved. Huang Yang, who was to buy the American flags online, has faced long-term scrutiny and monitoring by local security officers. During a phone call with friends, he confirmed he would buy the U.S. flags. According to a Chinese netizen familiar with the situation, the city's security office was alerted to their plan and brought him in for interrogation last week. The same person told us the American flags were all made and sold in China. Nothing was obtained illegally. He's now questioning what the CCP are afraid of, adding that the party already controls the country's guns, media, and money. 9 Hong Kongers were reportedly arrested on Saturday. That's according to the city's police force. The 9 are suspected of helping 12 local activists who fled the city in August. They were heading for Taiwan but were intercepted by Chinese authorities and held on the mainland.
The detainees' plight has grabbed international attention, with human rights groups raising concern as their families said they were denied access to independent lawyers and had suspicion that Hong Kong authorities helped in China's arrests. Accused of crimes tied to anti-government protests in Hong Kong last year, the group is being detained in China's southern city of Shenzhen after authorities intercepted their boat and accused them of illegal border crossing. Police arrested 4 men and 5 women suspected of arranging transport for the fugitives, said Hong Kong police official Ho Chun-tung. One direction of the investigation is whether they helped others to flee, said Ho, a superintendent with the force's Organised Crime and Triad Bureau. He added that he did not rule out the possibility of more arrests. He dismissed relatives' accusations that police in the Asian financial hub played a role in the arrests in China. Police also seized the equivalent of $64,500 in cash, computers, mobile phones and documents related to the purchase of a boat. People began fleeing Hong Kong for self-ruled Taiwan from the early months of the protests, most of them legally by air, but some by fishing boat, activists in Taipei have told Reuters.
The U.S. and Canada discussing the arbitrary detention of 2 Canadians in China. This as leaders from the 2 nations spoke in a phone call over the weekend. 2 Canadian citizens have been detained in China since late 2018. This weekend, Canada's ambassador to China was granted rare consular access to the 2 detainees virtually. The Canadian government said the arbitrary detention of the 2 remains deeply concerning, adding the government continues to call for their immediate release. Michael Kovrig and Michael Spavor were detained in China and charged with espionage in December 2018. This came just days after Huawei CFO Meng Wanzhou's arrest in Canada. Meng was arrested on a U.S. warrant over her alleged violation of U.S. sanctions in doing business with Iran. The Canadians' arbitrary detention is seen by Western governments as retaliation for Meng's arrest. On Saturday, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and President Trump discussed their detention on a phone call. Trudeau thanked Trump for the U.S. support in seeking the immediate release of the 2 Canadian citizens arbitrarily detained by China. U.S.-China ties are at their lowest point in decades. That's as Taiwan has become one of Beijing's largest points of contention. Back in mid-September, China sent fighter jets nearby the island for 2 days of military drills, sending Taiwan's Air Force scrambling. Now let's take a look at why tension is rising around the small island and why it involves Washington. China claims democratic Taiwan as its own territory to be taken by force if needed. The island has lived with that threat since 1949, when nationalist forces defeated in the Chinese Civil War fled there. But looking at history, the U.S. played a complicated role in the Communist Party's eventual control of mainland China. During the first 2 years of China's Civil War, the U.S. aided then-ruler of China, the Nationalist Party, or KMT, providing weapons and funding. In 1945, U.S. Special Envoy George Marshall flew to China. The urgent trip aimed to mediate conflicts between the ruling Nationalist Party and the country's Communist Party, known as the CCP. While there, Marshall met with Mao Zedong. At the time, the communist leader made promises about the CCP's vision for a democratic Chinese government. That after Marshall had previously criticized the KMT for corruption and its suppression of dissidents. He had also demanded reform. As the Chinese war gained strength in 1947, Marshall pressured the KMT to stop its aggression in northeast China. The move gave the CCP breathing room. A CCP general later described the KMT's failure to push forward as one of its biggest mistakes. It became the turning point of China's Civil War. The U.S. also ceased military aid to the KMT in July 1946 and maintained a weapons embargo for a year. China's Nationalist Army, exhausted after the Second Sino-Japanese War, eventually lost control of China. The Communist Party used the opening to rise to power. In the first 20 years following the country's civil war, Taiwan was recognized by the international community as the only legitimate government of China. But before sunrise on December 16, 1978, Taiwan's then president woke up to a phone call from the U.S.'s then ambassador to the Republic of China. 7 hours later, the U.S. announced that it had severed diplomatic relations with the Republic of China, or Taiwan. Soon after, as of January 1, 1979, it established relations with the communist regime occupying mainland China. It marked the end of the old triangular relationship between China, the United States, and Taiwan. But the U.S. and Taiwan kept up cooperation in some areas, like trade, commerce, defense, and culture. Taiwan was the United States' 11th largest trading goods partner as of 2018. Contrary to what the communist leaders promised George Marshall in the 1940s, mainland China did not become a democratic country following the CCP's rise. After retreating to Taiwan, the Nationalist Party also put the island under a one-party dictatorial rule for 30 years. Then in 1987, Taiwan's then president ended martial law. The island elected its first democratic president and adopted new legislature in 1996. Beijing saw the election as a Taiwanese pursuit of independence. In response, China's military fired missiles toward the island as a threat, causing panic there. The crisis was averted in the end due to U.S. intervention. Taiwan's opposition party later won the election in 2000, realizing a transition of power. The U.S. has stepped up support for Taiwan lately, sending top officials for 2 visits in as many months.
The United States knows that we will always have a friend in Taiwan.
That plus major new arms sales. Other than being an old ally and a fellow democracy, Taiwan also has strategic significance for the U.S. The island lies in a key location on the edge of the Pacific, between the disputed South China Sea and Japan. Secondly, it's a tech powerhouse, home to the world's biggest contract chip maker, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing. The U.S. sees Chinese tech firms as a security risk. Its move to cut off Beijing's access to advanced chips, including those from Taiwan. But according to China's foreign ministry spokesman, Taiwan authorities are spending their taxpayers' money on defense. But no matter how much it spends on defense, Taiwan is still tiny. Confronting the mainland would be like an ant trying to shake a tree. A conflict over Taiwan may soon suck in the United States and its Asian allies. Though it's still up for debate whether or not Washington would come to Taipei's aid. The U.S. has never explicitly answered that question. The strategic ambiguity was meant to deter China. But as the CCP steps up its aggression, more are now calling for the U.S. to shift to strategic clarity, to clearly state that it will defend Taiwan. And that's all for today's China in Focus. Thanks for watching and see you tomorrow.